Hello everyone. So as I mentioned last week, for this stream, what I plan on doing is a little bit of intro to weapons. So what that entails is I'm going to show you here real quick what I have in place for my test level. Um, so take a look at this, and never mind that. That's going to be actually another thing that's going to be interesting. I'm working on a destroyable entity, so hopefully that'll be in the next stream or something like that. But so what I'm planning for today is, if you remember, we have our character in our stream mixamo project. That's the guy with the short pants. But so what you're going to be able to do is walk around just in your normal stance. But then once you press the right mouse button, you equip the weapon, and then with the left mouse button you can shoot, and you can, just like with the template, the bullets have a weight and an impulse to them, so they can interact with the items in the environment. And of course you can walk with the weapon. I'm not going to go over what I did was create a blend space. So I'm not going to go over creating the blend space. I think I have a couple of videos for that. So it's just a little bit time consuming and not really the purpose of showing off weapons. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to save level. First of all, let's see where we're at with our startup project here. Alright, so let me minimize that, close that, and open all level. Did I just open the same one? I guess I did. Alright, so we're looking into this one. Okay, so here, right now we have nothing. It's just our guy that's moving around with our little blend spaces for the crouch and the regular walking. But there's no weapons. If you press fire, it can't fire, so there's nothing it can do at the moment. So let's actually give him a weapon to walk around with, and that will be our first step. So let's go into our character tool, and as always, this doesn't show up automatically. Hopefully it'll be fixed with the new iteration of the engine. You have to click in this area to get this to open, or to populate. So let's look into our pants guy here. He's got nothing but the skin attached to him. So I'm just going to click here and then add. So this is going to be a joint attachment, and let's look for geometry. So geometry is going to be our, I'm just going to use the default weapon that comes with the template, this modus weapon here. Okay, and I'm also going to use a joint to attach it to, and that's going to be my, I think it's going to be my left hand index 3 here. So you can see it's going to be placed right there. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly save this. You're not seeing the attachment at the moment, or like the actual geometry. So what I do is I usually just double click and open a different CDF file and then go back to my pants guy, and the weapon should be right there. Since they're probably text file that don't get updated instantly. Keep in mind the name of this is modus weapon. You can change this to something else. So I can change this to maybe just weapon, and then make sure you save the file. So let's actually position this a little bit. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go into my blend space and actually play my walk with rifle animation, because I want to place it based on how this animation, like the placement of the arm is, and so on. So if you hit 2, you can go into the, and first of all I just want to pause this because it's kind of moving the item all over the place. So I'm just going to try and position the weapon at least so that is close. So kind of around there, I would say. There we go, that's a little better. Let's see if we can make it face forward a little bit. Come on. Sometimes the angle that you're rotating these at is going to be very funky. There you go. Almost there. Okay, that's a little better. And then maybe rotate it up a little bit. Kind of like that. Let's give it a little bit of rotation on this axis. That's a little bit too much. Okay, I think that's going to be good. So it's pretty much kind of in his hands right now. So if he walks with it, you can see that the weapon is pointing forwards. And of course, if we go into here, we can actually take a look and see. This kind of changes a little bit based on the animation. I don't think I got the best selection of animations. These are just the mixamo ones. Okay, but he's got a weapon and he's holding it up. So I'm gonna be closing out of this. Actually, I need to save everything first. Oh no, I don't want to load it. Alright, so save all. Not sure why it's complaining about that. I failed to load that animation event. I'm not entirely sure what that's all about. But so let's cancel out of that, and let's see if once we jump into game mode, I think I might need to reload the level so that the character actually has the weapon in his hands. And so here we go. He's moving around with the weapon, and right now we can't fire it. So let's take a look and fix that. So to do that, let's go to our solution here. So solutions and game SLN. Alright, so let's see, it opened right here. Alright, so let's take a look at our weapon first and see how that is being used to fire up things. So if you look right here, you'll notice that the functionality is already in place. That comes with the template. I didn't make any changes to it. But the interface name, which is our attachment, is actually called barrel out. So we'll rename this to be called weapon, just like we called ours. So once we have that, one thing that I also wanted to do is I'm going to comment this out here in my bullet.h. So that way, whenever there's an event of collision happening to our bullet, it does not get removed. So let's go ahead and build this real quick. Alright, and let's jump into this and see if we can actually fire some bullets. So there's nothing. Oh, actually, there we go. Yeah, we can. We were actually firing, but the weird thing is that in this position, it's firing it backwards. I'm not sure why. So let's see if we can. There we go. And you can. I don't know if you were able to hear the sounds of when they collided with the items, but let's try and fix the direction. So for that, let's see, where did it get the impulse? So the impulse is right here. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, so we have the impulse, and I think there is also an initial velocity. There we go. So let's set this one. I'm going to set it a little lower just so we can see the actual bullets. So I'm going to set that to -10. Alright, so let's build, and we'll jump back into the project. Now whenever you do things like these, like small changes, you can always do that edit and continue feature. And so there we go. You can see like the bullets right now, they're just kind of just flopping down from the weapon, not really having too much of an impulse. It's probably due to the mass of it. For my project, I've actually brought down the mass to 2000. So I'm going to do the same thing for this. Okay, so we got bullets spawning. We have the weapon in our hands. Next thing that we need to do is actually make it so that we're only firing when we when we equip the weapon. So if you think of, you press the right mouse button, you pull the weapon out, and then with the left mouse button you can actually fire the bullets. So in order to do that, let's see, I'm just going to have my project open here. What I did is in a player.h, I've set up a boolean, so I guess we can place it down here, and I call that is weapon drawn. So m score is weapon drawn. Okay, so that flag is going to keep track of whether we pressed the right mouse button or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and in our initialize, we'll give this a value of false. So whenever you enter the game, you don't want to start off with the weapon drawn. So we'll place it right here. Weapon drawn equals false. But we need a way to control that value, right? So for that, we're just going to add an action. So let's go back to where we're registering all our actions right here. So we're going to add I'm just going to copy one of these. So maybe, let's see, which one do we want to get? Probably we'll just get this crouch. Oh. Put a little comment here, and this is going to be, I believe I called it weapon drawn for the action. Alright, and then the same thing to bind this action. One thing that you don't want to forget is that this is happening in two places. So aside from, we have this, so this is going to be, first of all, let's add this in. So this is going to be mouse, and I had to do a little bit of experimenting here. This is mouse 2. So one thing that you want to make sure you also add is this input flag to your player.h. So remember that the actions are triggered by this input flag enum. So let's add this in, and I call this weapon drawn. So let's add a comma. So if that equals 1, is it 5? Okay, so and then make sure that you also update the value here to weapon drawn. Okay, perfect. So now the thing that we need to do is actually set the value. So depending on whether the button is pressed or not, we want to set the value of our flag, so our boolean value of is weapon drawn. So in order to do that, let me see, I have a error right here. Okay, so I forgot to close the parentheses. Okay, so in order to track that, we want to track that just like we track our movement. So we'll go to our update movement request, and a quick way to do that, especially because this is starting to get a little long, you can just click on this drop down here and then update movement request. So as you remember right here, we were tracking the crouch, move left, move right, and all the other fun stuff. So a quick way to do this, right after crouch. So what I'm going to do is just going to copy this here, because the if statement is going to be pretty similar. So, but this one is actually going to be weapon drawn. So if input flags and weapon drawn, then we know that we can set our flag, which is m underscore is weapon drawn. We can set that to true. True. Okay. Else we want to set this one to false. Also, another thing that we might want to do is actually hide the weapon, because we don't want to maybe we don't want to walk with it all the time. So at least for me. So what I did is just get an if statement, and this is actually copied from our shooting mechanism here. So if p character get weapon, we get our interface by name, and right here we can paste it. So what we want to do is we want to p barrel out attachment arrow hide attachment. So this will also tell us that our our press key is working properly, and it's also for at least on my part for the functionality of it. And then we can do the same thing, and we can set this to 1, so then it shows. You can probably move this part right here at the top, but for now I'll just keep it here. It's a little simpler to manage. So let's go ahead and build and see if whenever we press our right mouse button, the weapon is hiding or showing. So we should start off with it being hidden. Alright, so let's open our level. Okay, so the weapon is hidden and we're walking around. I'm pressing the right mouse button and it shows. So there we go. And I think now if I shoot, yeah, there we go. I think it goes a little better, though it's not really pointing the right way, and that is probably due to the alignment, because this is not entirely based on where you're pointing at. I'm probably gonna try and work on that for a future stream. Okay, so the other thing that we want to do is since we have those animations that I showed earlier, we want to be able to use those animations to whenever we are pressing the right mouse button and equipping the gun, to use those animations. We want to not walk with it in our hands, kind of like that. So in order to do that, we've been through this before, so this is just going to be a little bit of adding some more code to our animation stuff. So in order to do that, let's add our fragment, and this is going to be a fragment ID, and I named this underscore m underscore walk with weapon ID. I'm going to create a second one, which is going to be a fragment ID, and it's going to be an idle, because we're going to have an idle state as well. So m underscore idle with weapon ID. Okay. So now that we have those two fragments, let's actually give them some values, and we'll have to also create those tags in our mannequin. Okay. So first of all, let's add those in our initialize function. Let's give those guys some values. So let's scroll up to right above here, or around here. So we have our m underscore walk with weapon ID, and let's just copy and paste this and place it right there. So first of all, this is going to be see, I named mine weapon walk. Okay, so there's one. And then let's also do the idle with weapon. Excuse me. So idle with weapon, this is going to be also, let's paste that in. So this is called the weapon idle. Weapon, one word, idle. There we go. Okay, so we have both our walk with weapon and our weapon idle. But now we need to know when to apply these animations. So like we've done before, is we have some states. But before we get into that, one thing that I also wanted to add is this is going to shoot pretty much at any time. So we just wanted to shoot when we draw the weapon, or we equip the weapon. So in this if statement, I'm just going to add our flag. So and m_is so that's how I spelled it, is weapon drawn equals true. Okay, so let's just give this a build and quickly test to see if at the moment we're only going to be able to shoot when the weapon is drawn. So, or when I have the right mouse button clicked. Okay, so this is building. Let's jump into the project here real quick. And jump into game. Okay, so now the weapon is hidden. I'm pressing the left mouse button, no firing happening. Now I'm equipping, and now we can see that we can shoot the bullets right now going in all directions. But if I let go of my right mouse button, there's no firing happening. Okay, so now we've come along quite some ways. The only thing we have left to do is actually add our animation states. So that's actually going to be quite simple. Whenever I did it the first time, I was thinking it's going to be a little bit more complex, but it ended up that it wasn't too bad. So let's go through our states and actually check to see if we are drawing our weapon, so that we need to change our state. So first of all, let's start off with standing. So if we're moving, and if our weapon is drawn, so m_weapon is drawn is true, then what we need to do is actually set our state to, and so far I have not added that state in, so I'm just going to do that right now. So we have our states right here, and let's see, I just want to name it exactly what I did in my test project. And we have two of them, so this is going to be ePlayer state _ weapon move, and then another one, ePlayer state _ weapon idle. There we go. Okay, so if weapon is drawn, let's set our state to weapon move because we are moving. So EPS _ weapon move. Okay, so we know that we're moving. Else, we're moving with a weapon. Or if we're not, if the weapon is not drawn, let's just do our regular movement action. Okay. Or right now this was going into moving, but we might not be moving. We might be idling, right? So we might be just standing in one spot. So if m_ weapon drawn is weapon drawn, then we set our m_ state to be equal to ePlayer state, and this is going to be EPS weapon idle. And I believe, I think you can go both with, you know, giving it the namespace of player state or without. So I'm just going to keep it consistent and add that in. Okay, so if weapon drawn, we are in weapon idle, or if it's not, then let's not forget about the else. Then we just do the normal actions. Okay, so that was for standing. Let's go into crouching. So crouching is going to be almost identical. So if we're moving, and this is going to be if m underscore is weapon drawn, then we do something in there, else we do our regular stuff. So if weapon is drawn and we're crouching, then just like before, our state is going to be weapon move. And of course, if you have an animation to pull the gun up and walk with the gun when in crouch mode, then you would have a separate state here that would be just the crouch weapon move. I don't have that at the moment, so I'm just going to keep it simple. Okay, so we have moving when in the crouch state, and now let's add it when we're on in our idling, so we're not moving state. So again, if m underscore weapon is drawn, then we do something in here, else. It's usually better to just put the else's, or like you know, do your if else stuff, at least for me, and then you know, add in so you don't miss any of the opening and closing braces, or you know, that. And so m underscore state equals to e player state, and this is going to be weapon idle. Okay, so we have that in place for crouching. Let's go into moving to standing and moving to crouching. So just like before, I guess I could have copied and pasted things. So if we're moving, and if m underscore weapon is drawn, then we set our state, else we do something else. So if the weapon is drawn, then our state is going to be not weapon idle, but weapon move. Alright, else we do our regular movement depending on the current state. Else, excuse me, I'm going to check again to see if m underscore is weapon drawn, and then we set our state to idle. And of course there's an else here. Else we have this going on. Alright, so I'm thinking that's pretty much it by the way it looks. Oh, one thing that we need to add also is we need to add our what's going to happen when we're in that state. You know, once we get into this this weapon move or weapon idle state, we know, you know, if we release the mouse, the right mouse button, we want to go back into our regular states. So let me just make a quick run through and see if I didn't miss anything from the initial states. So let's go through it real quick. So we have our standing. If it's moving and the weapon is drawn, then we go into weapon move. If we're not moving, then we're in weapon idle. The same thing for crouching. Weapon move, weapon idle. And then for standing, moving to standing, we have And yes, I guess I skipped over this one, so let's add this in as well. So right in here, moving to standing. And that's always good to, backtrack, because then it's going to be, a little bit more of a pain to find things. So else, we're doing that. So it's going to be weapon move, and else if m underscore weapon is drawn, then we do the weapon idle. Else, we're going to do that. Okay, and I think that puts us on par with where we need to be. And so, like I said, what we need to also add now is our weapon move and weapon idle cases. So right after our case moving to crouching, let's add in case, and this is going to be the player state. Actually, I think I can just paste it in here. Weapon move. And always add the break at the end so you don't forget about it. Okay, so what needs to be happening in this state? Just like before, we're going to check to see if we're moving. So if m underscore moving, do something, else do something else, right? So if we're moving, we're also going to check to see if our weapon is not drawn. So if we released the right mouse button, because this is the trigger to change the state. So this is going to be m underscore is weapon drawn. So if indeed we released it, then what we're going to do is set our state to be equal to, since we're considering that currently we're moving, our state is going to be e player state, and this is going to be moving to standing. We're just going to default to that. We don't really know if we're defaulting from, because I mean we only have one type of weapon move. We don't have a crouch weapon move. So we're setting our state back to moving to standing. Else, if we're not moving, we can set our state to, and this is something to consider here, because we cannot be moving, but our weapon could still be drawn. So if the weapon is not drawn and we're not moving, then we set our state to be the player state, and this is going to be standing. EPS standing, and standing, there. But we can also have an else here, which means that we can still have our weapon up, but we are not moving. So in that case, we need to set our state to be the player state, weapon idle. So we're not moving, but our weapon is up. So we need to go into weapon idle. All right, so now the last but not least, we have our case of E player state, and this is going to be EPS weapon idle. So we'll go through the same process. This is going to be quite similar. So we're checking to see if we're moving. And then, of course, we're going to have an else. And let's take care of each one of these. So if we're if we have our weapon idle and we're moving, or we're going, we're starting to move, let's check to see if our weapon is drawn or not. So M underscore is weapon drawn. What do we want to do? We want to set our state. So M underscore state is going to be equal to E player state, and this is going to be EPS moving to standing, because we're going to move and we don't have our weapon up. Else our state is going to be set to E player state EPS weapon move, because we are moving and our weapon is drawn. And now in our else case, if M underscore is weapon drawn is false, so our weapon is not out, we can set our state to E player state, and this is going to be EPS standing. EPS standing. So if you take a look, so we're in our weapon idle state, we are not moving, and the weapon is not drawn, so we can just go back into standing. Okay, so that's all nice and seems to be in place. But that doesn't really do much for us, right? Because we need to actually set those fragment tags. So let's go into update animation. And remember, this was our switch for the current state that we're in. So let's add those two states in here. I'm just going to go into my project just to make sure I'm not missing anything. So our first case is EPS underscore weapon move. So if we're in our weapon move case, then our M desired fragment ID is going to be equal to M underscore walk with weapon ID. I should have probably added the fragment to it, but I guess I was a little sloppy there. And we can break out of this. And then let's add the case for EPS underscore weapon idle. And M underscore desired fragment ID is going to be equal to our idle fragment. There we go. And we break out of this. And with that said, that should be pretty much it. The thing that we also need to do is, let's build this and see if we run into any issues first. Alright, so once that is built, we need to add those fragments ID to Mannequin. So that way, once we actually call for that fragment ID, we get the correct animation. So let's go, because currently right now if we were to jump into game mode and walk around, you'll see that there is really nothing happening there. So because we don't have those two fragment ID set. The same thing goes for when we're in idle. So let's go ahead and add those fragments ID to Mannequin. So let's go into Tools, Animation, and Mannequin. So we have our lovely Mannequin window here, and what we need to do is load our preview setup, and it's our player from the last time we worked on this. So let's set up a couple of these the new IDs. So first of all, this is going to be weapon move. Make sure you spell them just like you did, and hit OK. And once you have that selected, we can add our option here. So if you right click on this, you can add a layer, an anim layer, and do the same thing for third person. And once you double click in this area, you can actually add an animation. So opening this from the list, I'm going to choose rifle strafe. For that, make sure you set it to looping so you always play it. And then on our, do the same thing for the third person. and again just our blend space and right strafe and set it to looping again. Let's make sure this plays properly, and there we go. So right now it's playing that blend space. So let's see what happens. I'm just going to drag this here so it starts at frame 0. So let's go ahead and save changes. For whatever reason, this takes a little bit longer. I'm not entirely sure why it doesn't pop up instantaneously, but okay. So now let's see if we get something happening. Not at the moment, but sometimes if you reload the level, let's see if we can get something going. Let's see. Let's restart the engine real quick and see maybe there was something missing there. That is kind of interesting why it's not getting into the right state. So let's take a look at this again. So we have weapon move. At least I believe that's what I called it. Let's take a look at the code just to make sure that's what it was. Oh, well, I guess it was weapon walk. My mistake. So I'm just gonna rename or name this to weapon move. Let's exit out of the engine. Sometimes it's just like these little things that can trip you off a little bit. Okay, so let's see what happens once we compile this again and jump into the project. Alright, so let's see about this. Oh, look at that. The guy is, and it's using our blend space. It's not really pointing the weapon kind of awkwardly. So when it's walking forward, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, sharpshooter. But then once it goes backwards, I think it's, the animation is a little bit off. So hopefully soon enough I'll be able to do something with like inverse kinematics where you can actually, you know, based on the orientation of your camera, point the weapons. So not just relying on where it is on the bone, or you know, the bone orientation, so to speak, but also, and I think part of it is it's also the way I chose where the attachment is. So let's go into animation real quick and see if we can attach that weapon to a different bone. Maybe that will help a little bit with the weird positioning of things. So right now it's right there. Let's see if we go into our blend space animations and we want the rifle strafe. Yeah, as you can see, walking forward is looking pretty good. So let's go into our weapon and see if maybe, because like I've attached it to the left hand index, so I think I might need to go a little higher up, maybe maybe the left forearm, because that one I think it might be a little bit more static. So let's attach it to this, and I'm not entirely sure where it went. Kind of interesting. Well, but I think that kind of shows what I was trying to do, and I'm gonna exit out of this because I don't want to mess around with the positioning of the weapon right now. So as you can see, right, it's still off a little bit, but you can adjust it with those modifiers. You know, rotate and move left or right. One thing that we haven't done yet is, as you can see right now, the weapon is drawn, but we're still using our standing animations. So let's take a look and see if we can make it use the proper one. So first of all, let me check the code real quick and make sure that so this is going to be idle with weapon ID. So let's see if we're actually um, changing that in our animations. So let's go to update animation. And so right now, if you look at this, this is one of the issues. I've instead of using the idle with the weapon idle fragment ID, I'm using the idle fragment ID. So let's change that to m_idle with weapon ID. Okay, that's better. So let's quickly compile this, and we'll add that new fragment ID to our animations. All right, so we have build 1, build succeeded. Let's go into the engine. And open our level up and go into our Mannequin editor. Sometimes the formatting for the window is off. I'm not entirely sure why. So let's go ahead and open our player.xml file, and here we'll add a new ID and call this. Let's this time actually call it what we named it. So I think we named it weapon idle. So I'm just going to copy this from here and paste it into my new fragment ID, hit OK, and then here we'll create a new, I believe this is the new fragment entry. Okay, so let's select our option 1, add our anim layer to both the third person and first person, and once you double click here you can select our weapon idle. So let's go into our animation list and find our I think it's rifle idle. There we go. And set it to looping, and do the same thing for this one. Just double click and select your rifle idle and set it to looping. Okay, so let's just kind of zoom into this guy and see if we're actually playing the proper animation. And there we go, he's like, you know, panting back and forward. So we can save this, save all the changes, save. So once we go into game mode, like I said, I think we need to either reload the level or restart the engine, because, like I said, you know, you don't get. Oh, there you go. I guess that time it worked, just reloading the level. So right now, as you can see, he's walking around, and if you release the right mouse button, which was drawing the weapon, it just goes back into its regular animations, you know, like the crouching, regular walking that we've done previously. And then, you know, if you press on the right mouse button, he's like, he's got the weapon and doing all these movements. So, like I said, hopefully I'm going to be able to, with some help, maybe get these aim IK going, so that way whenever you look at something, you can also position the weapon towards that. So that's the plan for next, for you know, probably 1 or 2 streams from now. I'm thinking the next stream might be related to setting interior lighting for that night scene that I posted some time ago. Maybe probably a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And so kind of do a little bit of alternating between this and because I might not be able to have that ready for next week. But one thing that that I might have ready will be, as I mentioned earlier, a destroyable entity. So what that means is we'll give damage value to our bullets. So whenever they hit something, we're already registering the collisions. But when they hit something, we want them to affect that object. So that object will be this destroyable entity, and I can show you real quick what that is, just to kind of be a little bit of a preview. So I'm going to close out of this because this is my the stream project that I have. So let me just jump into the test level or test project. So this is our destroyable entity. I've kind of set it to just give it a move. So if we look at the properties for this, what this will have is going to have a component life, which you'll be able to set. And so the bullets, will have a certain damage, just like usually. So once they interact with this component, it's going to draw the life, and then another option here will be, along with the component life, you'll have the starter, like the undamaged entity geometry, along with the damaged entity geometry. So, prior to being destroyed and after being destroyed. And probably along with that, also a particle effect. So that will be the plan for also for a future stream coming up, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now. That data, just to give you an idea of what I'm planning coming up. Okay, so with that said, that's going to be it for this quick weapon intro. Hopefully you guys got something out of it, and we're ending here almost on an hour, so I'm glad hopefully that was kind of contained time-wise. So thank you so much for stopping by, and yeah, please let me know if you have any questions, suggestions, or any of that. Thanks again, and you guys have a great rest of the day and a great week. Bye.